Morning, everyone. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is number 300, With Heart and Mind, from the Grace Hymnal. Please feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you and stand in body or spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 300, With Heart and Mind. In person. Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Grace Preuss, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the worship committee who make this service possible include Alec Peck, our music coordinator, who will also be our speaker today, Adam Wedeking, who monitors our visual and online connections, and Lee Greer, who is in charge of our sound system today. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. Thank you for joining us. We come together this morning in this safe and spiritual space where we renew our commitment to universal peace, justice, and hope. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we seek to attain wholeness in a fragmented world. Before we begin, we ask you to join us in a moment of silence for the devastating conflicts occurring in the world today, as we pray and hope for peace and justice. In the words of Archbishop Elder Camara, without justice and love, peace will always be a great illusion. Thank you. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements that we'd like to share. We will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is also available on our website. Newsletter. The monthly UUCR newsletter comes out the first of every month by email and per request by postal mail. If you have something newsworthy or that you'd like to contribute, please email uuchurchofriverside.calendar@gmail.com or call the church office at 951-686-6515. If you would like to be added to our mailing list, please contact the church office. Lunar Fest book sale. Sincere thanks go out to Kate Lewicki, Linda Van Boris, Avery Burrows, and Adam Wedeking for their hard work in organizing and managing the book sale last week, and to all the volunteers who made this fundraiser possible. Thank you. Our first Sunday luncheon will be served today after the service. Today's theme is Baked Potato Bar. Contributions are appreciated and will be donated to the church fund. Please join us. Discussion, peace discussion. A peace discussion on today's topic will be held from roughly 11:45 to about 1 p.m. in the sanctuary following the luncheon. All are invited to attend and participate in the Q&A session. Women's Fed. The next Women's Fed meeting will be held on Saturday, February 10th at 1 p.m. in the Parish Hall. Everyone is welcome as we inaugurate the new Women's Fed President, Laura Luna, and continue our poetry theme. Please bring light refreshments to share. Note, wine is welcome. Lunch series. Join us on Saturday, February 17th at 1:30 p.m. as we continue our lunch series with pasta dishes. There will be good food and good fellowship. Suggested donations are $25 per person or sweat equity, $12 for children ages 6 to 12, and free for ages 5 and under. This event is advance purchase only, and all proceeds will go to the church fund. Church Council meeting. Church Council will meet on the second Friday of the month in the annex. The next meeting will be at 4 p.m. on February 9th. And now I'd like to invite Adam Wedeking, the chair of our Social and Environmental Justice Committee, for a special announcement. Adam?
Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning. Good morning. I just wanted to announce today that the Civil Rights Institute, if you haven't been there, if please go. But the Civil Rights Institute is looking for volunteers. They're looking for people who can give tours of the place and just be there when it's open and help folks. If you would like to, February 15th, they will be having a volunteer training. In order to sign up for it, you'll have to contact Blanca. Her information is there. If you see me after service, I can give you that info as well. Give her a call or an email and let her know that you'd like to sign up for the volunteer training at the Civil Rights Center. She'll be glad to have you there. So if you get an opportunity and you'd like to learn more, especially if you've been there and you'd like to learn more about it, give Blanca a call and I'll see you on the 15th. Thank you.
And I apologize, I forgot one very important announcement. There will be a bake sale next Sunday, the third Sunday, on February 11th, just in time for Valentine's Day. Stock up on sweets. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. You are welcome to read with me our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to live in service to humankind and all life, in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. Today's speaker is UUCR member Alec Peck. Alec has been a practicing UU for 23 years and has a deep passion for the intellectual and the spiritual challenges which arise from exploring the 6 sources of our living tradition. He was raised in a UU church chosen by his father, who was raised Quaker, and his mother, raised Jewish, though both are humanist in practice. Alec recently spent 2 years studying natural science at Creighton University, a Jesuit institution, and is now completing his PhD at UC Riverside. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East is once again destroying and ending lives of the people who live there. And so American citizens and politicians are once again turning their focus to this conflict. Much effort has been dedicated to determining who are the bad guys and who are the good guys, and what exactly America's role should be in these matters. We know that things are rarely so black and white, but the complex history of the Middle East makes the true story hard to piece together. We believe that we are all part of a single world community, so it is important to understand how we, personally and as Americans, are interconnected in the social web. We are all struggling towards happiness and truth on our way, so we must work for the freedom of all peoples. We have 2 lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's reading for the chalice lighting is We Hold That Moment in Our Spirit by Adam Slate. When the great mosaic of humanity is treated with respect and dignity, when no person is threatened by hunger or war, when we have extended hospitality to the stranger and tended to the sick, when equity and justice reign everywhere, then we shall all be free. We light this flame to hold that moment in our spirit and in our minds until we can make it real. Thank you, Bill. Greeting our guests. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so now I will ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic in front of the pulpit and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. Please be aware that you'll be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online. Do we have any church members who'd like to volunteer today?
Good morning. I'm Diane Slota. I'm visiting from Kirkland, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle, where I've been a practicing UU for 35 plus years, and very happy to be with you today. I'm just I'm visiting my granddaughter who's in college here. So just here for the day. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And that's how it's done. So if you are new here, a visitor, or an old friend, I think we have a volunteer already. Come up to the mic in front of the pulpit.
Hi, I'm Karina. I was wandering around the street literally, and I walked in on a rainy day, and I remember coming here as a local as a kid, and I wanted to see it again, and seeing the impact now as an adult with my morals and values. It was just like, oh my God, this is exactly where I needed to be. Thank you. So I'm excited to be here. Karina.
Karina?
Karina, yeah.
Karina. Thank you, Karina. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kay Demlow. This is my husband, Jay Hamlin. We are visiting just this weekend from Oregon, where we're members, long time since 1999, of the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Washington County. And for short, we call it UCWAC. We're just happy to be with other UUs this morning while we're on vacation.
Welcome. Two visitors from the Northwest. Welcome. Okay. If there's someone online who'd like to introduce themselves, please raise your hand and we will call on you by Zoom. Please let us know who you are, where you are from, and how you found out about us. Okay. For any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour, or the first Sunday lunch today, in this case, after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you are here, and leave your contact information if you'd like to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Adam, do we have joys and concerns today? Oh, joys and concerns was last week, wasn't it? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, our hymn now is 1064, Blue Boat Home, from the Teal Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand again in body or spirit, and join us in singing number 1064, Blue Boat Home. This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may also contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as on the church website and the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. Amazon gift cards are also available. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe or Robert Brown in the church office if you are interested in purchasing the gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. To those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. And to all those who have joined us here today, thank you for the gift of your presence. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? A bag will also be passed around to collect any food or hygiene items to be distributed to those in need. Hymn is number 402, From You I Receive, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive,
Our meditation today is by Eric Cherry. I invite you to get into a comfortable position, pause, and take a deep, cleansing breath. Close your eyes if you wish, and place your feet flat on the floor as you allow yourself to feel calm, peaceful, and focused. The history is complex. The politics are intense. The fear and anger are overwhelming, and the future is unclear. But glimpses of a hopeful vision will not be bombed into oblivion by anyone. In prayer, we call to mind the peacemakers, neighbors of differing faiths, with different histories, with different politics, with different emotions, who find room for each other in their hearts, in their dreams, and in their lives. Those who hold firmly to a vision of peace and justice anywhere in the world. Inspire courage among the peacemakers. Be present with political leaders, ensuring a retreat from violence and a procession towards the peace table. Guide the hands of all those who are caring for the injured, the hungry, and the grieving. And open our own hearts to compassion. Remind us of our complicity and responsibility, and lead us towards generous engagement and move us always towards a vision of peace. Amen. Now let us pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Alec Peck, who will be speaking to us on who's who in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Alec?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Grace, for that very kind introduction. Oh, here's my mouse. Give me one moment. Yeah, so I've got a, no, I will not. Thank you for letting me speak today. So first, I wanted to mention a few things that I will not be talking too much about, because there's a lot of history that we don't have time for. And I'll also say that I intended to not speak for too long, not only because we have an ongoing panel which is covering this after the service, but also because the political commentary on this abounds. There's plenty to find. So I didn't want to add to that too much. But now looking at what I've written down, I'm not sure how long it'll take. But I will try not to hold you for too long. But so I'm not going to first talk about the Bronze and then Iron Age empires that led to the ancient kingdom of Israel and Judah, and those existed 2,900 years ago until about 2,700 years ago. And since then, I won't talk about the other groups that have called it home: the Babylonians, Persians, Macedonians, Romans, Ottoman Turks, the Arab revolt that brought the Palestinians to the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. But from that rich history of different empires, it does convince me that the lines between these groups are now basically meaningless. And what we see here is one family that has been dealing with an internal strife for perhaps literally millennia. I will not have time to talk about the armistice and the wars of 1967 and the 1980s. I will not have time to talk about East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem and how that agreement has eroded over time in favor of Israel, now claiming all of it for themselves. But there are a few things that I do want to have time to address. I want to talk about the fact, as we've already alluded to, that the social and political relations in this region are indeed very complex, and we don't understand them. And even if I had time to explain everything that I've gleaned research preparing for this morning, we will still not understand. I'm not saying that it's impossible for us Americans to understand, but I do think that we would at least need to live there for a few years to have a chance. And I think that this misunderstanding of what will help these people, the people who live here, who lived in that region, and this misunderstanding is really at the root of America's failures to ensure justice, and in this case, to ensure a place to live for the people that have a right to it. America has largely supported Israel. Right now, we're writing a multi-billion-dollar package in the House and the Senate, and we do this because we think it's for the greater good, perhaps not just for them, but also maybe also for us. And I don't think what's happening right now is at all fair. And I do think it is a humanitarian crisis in large part because of the actions taken by the Israeli government. But also, before continuing now, I want to mention my personal connection. So here is also a map of what Israel currently looks like. It's just this one slide here. Yeah. Great, thank you, Adam. I've kind of so on the left-hand side, yeah, is a picture from the Israeli government, and in red are the areas that they do not recommend traveling to. You can see the West Bank, which is a Palestinian region, part of the Northern Shore, which borders with Lebanon. So part of the reason I have this map up is because as a scientist, I'm terrible at geography. So I have a hard time keeping in my mind where all these things are in relation to each other. So this is partially for my benefit. And also Gaza, which I've outlined in the little purple region, which is in fact much smaller than the red no-go zone, which is in there, which is why I've outlined it in that little purple line. So here is now Israel, and on the right is a picture from Al Jazeera showing how the Palestinian settlement has changed over the last, say, 40 years. Now, with my connection to Israel, I can claim a birthright trip to Israel, and that's because my mother's mother and her mother before her were Jewish. And so, according to the rules, that makes me part of the kingdom of the Jews. Now, my Jewish grandparents were not very religious, as I think I mentioned. As far as I know, they never went to a synagogue, certainly not while I was alive. And the closest thing they had to a spiritual home was the UU church that my parents went to, which they would go to often. And so I have a very distant relationship with Judaism as a religion, but I am still invited to go on this if I want to claim my birthright. And there is a secular variant of Zionism. And I would occasionally get propaganda emails from my grandfather about why having a state of Israel is so important for the Jewish people. But we have always been Americans. My grandfather on my Jewish side and their family, they moved to America before the war. And that side came from Eastern Europe at that time. And I'll be mentioning for the rest of this a few terms which I want to be clear, which I've already mentioned already. So when I say Israel, for the most, unless I say otherwise, and especially Israel in relation to the Zionist theory, it's both an ancient land and it's a biblical object, but it's also the present day country. And when I say Israel, I'm going to mean specifically the state, lowercase s as in country and capital S as in the government that controls it, which is currently calling itself Israel. And when I say Palestinians, I mean those that live in the West Bank and in Gaza, which lack a government that really helps or represents them in the usual way that we think of a government doing for its people. And so I think to start this, I want to lay out just a little bit about what's going on, and as I say, who's who in this conflict. Because when we want to understand the sides of a war, I think we like to understand it kind of like a drama or a play. I've been thinking a lot about an analogy like Romeo and Juliet. We don't maybe expect that the Montagues and the Capulets are always, that one family is the good one and one is the bad one, or that they're always good or always bad all the time. But we do kind of expect that we should be able to draw these lines around groups of people and be able to understand the relationships between these groups in a nice way that leads us, through the plots of the story, so to speak. But as I've already claimed, I don't think it's easy to do that in this case. Because what we have in this region, perhaps starting most obviously, we have the region that we call Palestine and the people who live in it. And the region that we call Israel and the people who live there. And right now, they are not purely racial or religious monoliths. There are Muslims who live in Israel. There are some Jews who live in the occupied territories. But within Israel and within the Jewish part of Israel, there are still yet other subdivisions. And there are the European Jews, mostly Ashkenazi, which came and that form most now and will form all of the recent settlers from the last 100 years. There's also the Sephardic Jews that come from North Africa, and the Mizrahi Jews, the small original population of Arabic Jews. And these are, for the most part, racial lines that we see within Jewish society. And there are tensions within those groups as well, and they do not always see eye to eye politically or necessarily consider themselves part of one single in-group. Within the Palestinians, we have the original 1900s population that existed there before even the First World War, and the British came in, and I'll mention that a little bit. And those Palestinians never had any conflict with the Mizrahi Jews that lived in that region alongside them. These are the people that are currently subjugated by Israel's government. They originally came from the Arab Revolt in that region, which came from the Ottoman Empire. And that common conflict coming from the Arab Revolt is really what defined that group of people in that original 1900s setting. But from them, there are also, and within that group, most well known is Hamas. This is the closest thing that the Palestinians have to a government, but they have their power through their support of other political interests in the region, namely other extremists, mostly to the north, which are shown a little bit on that border, like the Fatah, which grew out of the power vacuum from Al-Qaeda, but also all the Muslim countries around there that have their own differing opinions. On top of that, there are other complex relations, like who is considered Arabic. For the most part, it means those who speak the Arabic language, but those people also have something in common with each other. And often the Israeli settlement talks about their conflict with the other Arab countries. And there's a lot of complicated pieces here, and we can try to fit them into a Venn diagram and understand their relationships and sort of the nuanced relations between each possible bubble. But I think that we will ultimately, in trying to understand it in this way, impose some of what we already know from our own culture, and we will not be able to truly understand what it's like to be a part of any of these groups or to be a part of this system where you have so many of these factors at play. But there's a couple other big players in the game that I haven't mentioned, because we also have the British, who originally helped establish Israel after the First World War, and the Americans, who encouraged many of the European Ashkenazi Jews to go to Israel after the Second World War. And I will refer to this involvement as the Zionist experiment, in the same way that we talk about the American experiment, the American colonies becoming their own nation. Because after both of those world wars, with the Arab Revolt from the first and the aftermath of the Holocaust from the second, we have British and Americans that are left trying to figure out what would be best for these European Jews, and also what would be best for Europe, keeping in mind that with the climate of the world wars, having people who would agree to be your ally when the fighting breaks out was really quite important to these nations. Also keep in mind that these European Jews, they in many ways came with the racial hatred of Europe. They had just been given the short end of the stick in a violent fascist regime, and we take for granted now the political stability of Europe that we see after World War II. But remember that before then, we had constant small nations that were at war with each other, nations that are the size of individual states here in the US. And the goal of the British and the American at that time was to create a nation in the Middle East which the Western countries could rely on, again, if worst comes to worst, but also serve, or for some perhaps to get rid of, the Ashkenazi population in Europe. And again, the Zionist experiment comes in two flavors, the religious and the secular. But even the secular version of this often find that they need to rely on scriptures in order to justify their war. And that's because being Jewish is the main justification for why they deserve to take this land and why they deserve to live on it. And as I've already mentioned, this state now consists of at least 3 individual castes of Jews that themselves have different levels of power within this hierarchy. And even I get to claim a birthright, even though I certainly, from a racial perspective, don't fall into any of those 3 categories, and I have little to do with Judaism. And so Zionism, it seems, has very little to do with religion or racial ancestry. But the one thing that all of the immigrants do have in common is that they're willing to displace the locals that already live there. And prior to those early 1900s and the interventions from the British, and the people who had called themselves Palestinians did have a stable government, a government and a land that had Jews and Christianities that were in a minority, but not an oppressed minority or one that was in conflict with the majority, simply ones that were not as popular in that region. And in the absence of the Zionist experiment, we see that these conflicts don't arise along those racial or religious differences. So I can only conclude then that this is not a fight about religion, and it's not a fight about race. It is a fight about who gets to control and live on the land, just as it has always been. And so what is fair to do here? And what is just? In particular, what do we do about this conflict right now? Because we have to do something. And there will be some kind of resolution to this, whether it's some kind of one state or a 2-state solution or something else. This conflict must be resolved in some way. And do we need a 2-state solution? Do we need those borders? Is that border necessary because of some irreconcilable difference between them? The current border, the one that's outlined here, is one which is sectioned off from Israel, but it's one that, as you'll actually notice from this chart, Israel actually claims control over that territory. And so what exactly is it bordering off? And if we look at the key on the map, it will tell you that the purple line, which I've emphasized there, is the armistice line. The armistice from, I believe it's 1967. But according to the Israelis, this effectively means that this region is under Israeli control, but it does not have the support of the Israeli government, nor does it have representation in what they call a democracy. And what exactly would a one-state solution look like? Especially, what would a one-state Israel solution look like? And how would that be different from a one-state Palestine solution? And I claim that, in a way, we already know what a one-state Israel solution would look like. Israel at least acts kind of like a democracy, but the parliament is currently filled with many right-wing parties. And if we look at the relative economic and military power of the Israelis and the Palestinians, it's clear who has the upper hand in that case. Hence, any realistic one-state solution will look how the Israelis want it to look. And for that, we can just look at the West Bank, an area that Israel already claims, and yet it refuses to claim the people within it. Families are evacuated there from their home, will end up evacuating their homes as bombs are going off, just to have Israeli families rush in to squat there. And those Israeli families that squat until the Palestinians are forced to give up or are arrested are backed by the Israeli government. And they're backed there because they were invited by the Israeli government, who promised them that if they came, they would have basically a free home if they were willing to move there and perhaps help displace some people along the way. And what would a one-state Palestine solution look like? Clearly, a one-state Israel solution would not be friendly or perhaps outright hostile to Palestinians or people who are Muslims. I think it's not far to say that they're heading swiftly towards concentration camp-like situation on the West Bank. But the militant groups from the north, the Fatah and Al-Qaeda before them, have also made it clear that Jews would not be welcome or equal under Sharia law. But that's not what the majority of the Palestinian civilians want. Hamas is the closest thing that the people of Gaza have to a government. Keep in mind that they do not exist in the West Bank. One perhaps imperfect analogy would be to compare them to the US military. Even with our democracy, we have essentially no input to what the US military does or their actions. And we, the people, are not the ones who decide who we go to war with, even if we are the ones who are sent to die for it. And they made it clear, that is Hamas, in 2006, that they consider themselves irreconcilable with their Jewish neighbors. And so, but what is fair to do in this case? And more generally, I mean it, what is fair? Because we can see an ancient principle, an eye for an eye, that came from this very region of the world. But not too long ago, ex-President Trump said, quote, "If you spill a drop of American blood, I will spill a gallon of yours," referring to this conflict. And Trump and Netanyahu are in many ways cut from the same cloth, because that is what they consider to be fair. 20 eyes for an eye. That is what is considered fair to those right-wing ideologies. And what is right to do here? If you are drafted into the army and then you're shot dead, will it feel any less like murder if it's because you were at war? When is it justifiable to kill? Here in this church, we would say that war is never justifiable. And not being at war would be great, but the fact of the matter is that they are. And as far as I'm concerned, they have been constantly for, let's say, 30 years. And when you're at war, perhaps you say you have to murder. And let's look at the war from even just the last 10 years. Between the first and the second Intifada, there were 5,300 Palestinian deaths and 1,200 Israeli deaths. Looking at the Gaza war, starting in, I believe, 2006, the total casualties reported by Wikipedia are 3,700 Palestinians to 82 Israelis, of which 9 were civilians. And we can only wonder how many of those 37,000 Palestinians were civilians. And I will make a point about getting information about what the state of the war is like. Very much like information coming out of Russia, I think we Americans need to be incredibly skeptical of any information that we get, because the most accurate information that we could get is written in Arabic or Hebrew. It's not something that we have direct access to. And there are a lot of layers that are between us and, let's say, the firsthand sources. And so I think any information about what is happening needs to be taken with a grain of skepticism until we have some time to look back on it in hindsight. And looking at these conflicts from the past 10 years, I can't see how we can organize it in terms of move and counter move like a chess game. And how exactly do we escalate into war in the first place, let's say over the course of a few years in the lull periods between conflicts? There was certainly the case of strong, let's say, nonviolent oppression going on in those regions, which eventually motivates or pushes one group into violence. And maybe some response to that is reasonable, but war, of course, always has collateral. And so if you have some violent response to that, there will always have yet another excuse to have more violence. And we see that violence begets violence, just as always. If we try to look farther back at, say, even the last 50 years, looking more broadly at how the Americas have intervened in Iraq and Iran, Afghanistan and Syria, all of these interventions have failed. The current Fatah was born out of the power vacuum that Americans created out of Bush's Iraq War. And Al-Qaeda themselves were born from the failed American military inventions in the 80s before that. And each intervention tries to learn from the one before it. Keyword there is tries. We look at things and say, oh, maybe that was the problem, and we try to fix it for next time. And I will not give you an answer to that particular problem. There is no easy answer to why American interventions in the Middle East have failed. There cannot be an easy answer, because if there were, frankly, we would have solved that problem. But what do I, with my American and UU sensibilities, think we should happen in order to achieve long-term justice? Both populations have nationalistic groups that wish to continue the millennia blood feud of violence. And both of them have large underrepresented populations that would get along just fine in the absence of those groups. We can try to impart our liberal Western value judgments on this situation, but there are clearly social aspects that we simply do not understand and that keep our unique American solutions from working to solve their problems. And I think this is an important practical question. What should we, the US, do in response to this? After all, even from our liberal perspective, do we not have a moral imperative to help these people? Are they not our neighbors in this world community? And it would be completely foolish to cut ties from Israel. It is an American-born experiment, American and British. And we have an interest as a nation to ignore some of the less agreeable actions of our allies. Our influence as a nation will certainly diminish on the world stage if we were to sanction Israel until they follow the rules that we have stated that we have. Because when the UN tweets, even war has rules, and the official government of Israel defensively tweets back that Israel has a right to defend themselves, that does more than raise my eyebrows. This does not comfort me at all. And at the risk of suggesting another American solution, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "And so I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. But at the same time, it is necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities, as it is for me to condemn riots." Here in America, Black Americans were inspired by Jewish songs of escaping slavery in the Exodus from Egypt. But I do think that now, I think Israelis might benefit from looking at themselves and what they have become, and perhaps what they are at risk of becoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Our closing hymn is not on the screen. Our closing hymn is number 112 from the Gray Hymnal. Do you hear? Please stand and body your spirit and join us in singing hymn number 112 from the Gray Hymnal.
Do you hear, oh my friend, in the place where you stand, through the sky, through the land? Do you hear, in the height on the plain, in the vale you stand? To the outermost strand. Do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear, do you hear? All the dreams, all the dares, all the sighs, all the prayers, they are yours, mine and theirs. Do you hear, do you hear? Do you hear, oh my friend, in the face, in the space, through the sky, through the sky? Do you hear, do you hear? In the heights, in the height, on the veil, in the veil, in the sun, in the sun, in the hear, do you hear, do you hear?
When we say, go now in peace, we mean the peace that asks us to stop grasping after power over, and the peace that demands that we live fully, that we love with a fierce love, that we hope with a bold hope, that we pray and sing and struggle. Remember this, within and all around us is our source. May we return to it, heed it, and honor it. Amen. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Alec, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. We will now adjourn to the parish hall, where we will share in the first Sunday lunch until 11:45 a.m. Following the lunch, there will be a discussion, including Q&A with the audience in the sanctuary until roughly 1:15 p.m. Please join us as we continue our discourse on peace. Thank you for joining us.